From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB final one for the week. I'm Juliette Sarli. Great to have your company with me, I should say. Great for you to be with me. It is Friday and my words are all tongue-tied. Let's have a look at the market. We are exacerbating that sell-off somewhat in the latter part of the day's trade, down there by 0.2% on the ASX, which has very much been seesawing today. We had a record high coming through from Wall Street. You've seen some very solid moves coming through in the miners, but losses in real estate, technology and retail sectors. Now, we did briefly rise above that psychological barrier of 8,600 points on the ASX 200 in early trade, but somewhat of a sell down in the latter part of trade, and we're down around 1/10% there on the ASX 200 as well as we head into the match off. And pretty flat over the last 5 days, or just down around 1/3% or so. So very much ASX seesawing today on this tariff whiplash that we are getting from the president. Remember as well that we had some more news coming through from the president in terms of tariffs. So about 10 to 25% baseline for most countries, 35% he mentioned for Canada. I had a great conversation today with Andrew Thomas from Magenta, really giving us some good insights into what he thinks, because he was basically saying as soon as you get one headline and try to react to that, there's another one coming through, and that's certainly what we had this morning with President Trump mentioning Canada is now in his sights. And bye-bye Johns Lyng. Gosh, the number of companies that are being taken over by private equity or by big corporations continues. Johns Lyng announcing today that it will be acquired by Pacific Equity Partners for over $1 billion. Let's have a quick look at some of the sectoral moves we mentioned there. The miners very much in focus, and that great rotation from the banks to miners underway. Fortescue up by 3%. Thomas Atkinson from FX Evolution, good chat with him today. He thinks that it's got a good head and shoulders pattern and could break out even further. You can find that interview on our website. Remember, about a year or maybe 2 years ago now, Fortescue was more around the $30 a mark level. Let's have a look at the banks. A bit of weakness coming through in CBA, down 0.7%, $179.41. And the REITs certainly under pressure today. You can see some of the big ones like Goodman Group there, off by around 1.5%. We have, though, been following this big spike in rare earth stocks. Lynas up by 16%, Iluka up 23%. Now, this is after the US-based MP Materials rocketed 51% overnight on news it struck a multi-billion-dollar deal with the US Department of Defense to build a new magnet plant and expand rare earth capabilities. We touched on the Johns Lyng takeover, this $1 billion deal by the private equity group Pacific Equity, sending shares up 22%. Australian Strategic Minerals also a high flyer today, releasing a scoping study that removes more than $900 million from its Dubbo project capital costs. And Ventia heading the other way, despite announcing it secured an amendment to its new fibre upgrade contract with NBN, which is expected to add another $280 million in revenue over the next 3 to 4 years. All right, let's welcome to the COB Jonathan DeWitt from Zero Cap on a day when we have seen Bitcoin hit fresh highs, and of course we're reacting to Project Acacia from the RBA as well. Great to see you, John. Just talk us through the momentum we're seeing in crypto at the moment, with Bitcoin pushing through, I think, 115,000.
Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, we actually just hit 118,000 US dollars just before the call started there. So amazing day for cryptocurrency. We've seen a really interesting short squeeze. You know, this has been a textbook short squeeze. The wonderful thing about the blockchain is you can see the assets moving around. And what we've noticed over the past few weeks is exchange assets where people go to buy and sell. Bitcoin has been leaving, right? People have been withdrawing from exchanges. So that's led to a liquidity crunch on the spot side. And then you've had all this short derivatives interest building, right? On the back of the tariffs, on the back of global uncertainty, on the back of Iran and Israel. And of course, at some point, the straw breaks the camel's back. And we're just seeing an amazing run at the moment. We expect corporate buying to continue. We're seeing a lot of it on our desk. And really, this is just kind of the beginning of a move to 200,000 in our view by the end of the year.
Oh, I was about to give me a timeline. By the end of the year, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Is it lifting all the other cryptos up with it, John?
It is, yeah. Look, all coins are rallying today. Ethereum's on a really strong run. We're seeing more and more moves on the back of Ethereum treasuries in corporations, which is interesting. You know, it's been the Bitcoin narrative really for a year, and now you're seeing some pretty sizable corporate treasuries taking up Ethereum as part of their FX reserves. So Ethereum's on a good run. I think the alts are really just catching the wave of what the majors are doing. You know, are we going to see the magic altcoin run that the DeFi guys want to see on an extended period? Yeah, I'm not too sure. You know, I think Bitcoin and Ethereum just have so much momentum behind them at the moment. They'll continue to lead the pack.
All right, let's talk as well about what's happening with Project Acacia and maybe try and explain it to us in layman's terms, because Zero Cap is part of this.
We are proudly a part of this, alongside some very credible institutions: Westpac, Combank, ANZ, JP Morgan's involved. And really the use case here is around testing the use case of digital money and how it can settle transactions globally on a cross-border basis, on a decentralized basis. The RBA's made it very clear that this is just a test. It doesn't necessarily mean anything's being put into law, but the sentiment obviously behind all of this is that there is an open book to seeing if there's a possibility behind this digital cash and tokenized markets. So we're really looking at testing the wholesale use case here. CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, were originally looked at over the past couple of years for retail. You know, would we use that as retail participants here in Australia? But now more and more the thematics behind this is moving to more of a wholesale use case. Things like bonds, tokenized real estate, the ability for cross-border payments for JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. You know, already JP Morgan over the past few years has been transacting billions of dollars of bonds on their Onyx blockchain, now Kinix. So these use cases are really around testing what the tokenized markets could do for the efficiency of Australian commerce.
Is it also, I guess, proof that you can have traditional finance and digital innovation working side by side?
Well, I'm biased, but yeah, I think it is. You know, we're seeing more and more convergence of traditional markets and crypto assets, right? And the blockchain's a wonderful thing. It can increase the velocity of money. And when you look at the way the internet has improved speed over the past decade, over the past 2 decades, you know, you can look at the velocity of money as being really an enabler for global commerce. And the more and more traditional markets and crypto markets converge, the more we're just going to see improved efficiencies, better opportunities for cross-border commerce, more products, apps, the ability for mobile phones to connect up, lower FX rates for consumers. There's just a whole range of use cases here. And really the first step is for the regulators and the central banks to come in and say, hey, we can see there's a potential. Let's create a sandbox for some select players to test in.
All right, what's next when we look at this trial? Obviously, it's going to take 6 months or so, but also, I guess, what the next sort of litmus test is for what we're seeing in cryptos with these records continually being broken.
Yeah, look, I think what we're going to see is more and more public companies that are deciding to use Bitcoin as a core part of their strategy. So obviously MicroStrategy, now Strategy, you know, they've got, I think it's over 70 or 80 billion now of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We've got 21 Capital who's come in. And there's a whole range that are now going to come in and look at this as a potential treasury play. We have publicly listed companies here in Australia that are also looking more and more closely into it. Now, I think that creates this idea of passive locked up capital because the unit price of the shares can move, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to sell the Bitcoin, right? The NAV can kind of move alongside the sentiment of the market. So it's going to create much more locked up liquidity, which could be very buoyant for Bitcoin and to an extent Ethereum, depending on how much lands up in these treasuries. I think that'll probably be the major theme we see over the next 2 years.
All right, always good to get your insights. Thank you so much, Jonathan Duet there from Zero Cap. Let's get back to the equity markets. The stock of the day was Lynas Rare Earths. Nadine spoke with David Lane from Ord Minnett and Andrew Coleman from Team Invest.
Is a market that is hugely volatile in a commodity business, which means the stability and the predictability is like throwing darts at a dartboard. So from my point of view and the Team Invest point of view, it would have been a sell before the price jump, and it's probably an even bigger sell after the price jump.
So we think that the market is probably getting a little bit ahead of itself. As I said, we had a hold on Lynas with a target price of $8.70 prior to this announcement. So with the share price jumping as much as it has today, I'd certainly at the very least be holding it and potentially even be tempted to look at taking a few profits at current prices.
All right, let's have a look at market leaders as we round out a very sort of flat session. We touched on Iluka and Lynas really being the top of the heap there. Mineral Resources also having a solid session, up almost 8%. Web Travel up 3.5%. Whitehaven Coal up 3.2%. To the downside today, Lifestyle Communities coming off a recent run, down by 5.4%. HMC Capital, IDP Education, Capstone Copper and Lovisa also hit today, down 3%. In the small end of town, Sunrise, it's been on the list a couple of times this week, up by about 27%. Freelancer also having a good session. And some more moving into lithium and rare earth players. American Rare Earths up 10.4%. To the downside, Peak Minerals there didn't have a great session. AML 3D, we spoke to them earlier in the week. Really great conversation with the CEO there, particularly what they're doing with the US Navy, but they've come off some of their gains, down 7% today. Tonight, we get the US federal budget, also UK May GDP and industrial production. The UK's monthly real GDP estimated to have grown by 0.4% in May 2024, following no growth in April. Looking at the week ahead, we've got the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Confidence coming through on Tuesday, along with China's GDP for the June quarter. Wednesday, we get the building activity for the March quarter, but of course, Thursday is the big one with the June jobs data. CommSec tipping 20,000 jobs will have been added to the economy. We also get reads on US inflation and factory inflation, or PPI. So the local market closing lower by around 0.1% there on the CBO 200, a similar fall on the ASX 200. 85.80 is where we sit, down just 10 points. And off by about 1/3% over the week, down 0.7% from all-time highs. Having a look at the sectors, really that big rotation into the miners helped us out today, but elsewhere, 10 of the 11 sectors were in the red, so it was only the miners that were afloat today. All right, we await more headlines from the White House. We'll be back to do it all again from 9:45 a.m. Eastern on Monday. Enjoy your weekend.